Well, hey there, life groups. We are almost at the finish line of our study of the book of Acts for this calendar year. I hope that you've enjoyed it. I know that I sure have. This past week, we are discussing Acts 27 and 28, which if you were here on Sunday, you know is an epic narrative of sorts, kind of a Homer's Odyssey level story of storms and shipwrecks and all kinds of James Cameron level excitement. But what's interesting in this travel narrative archiving Luke and the Apostle Paul's trip with Paul's imprisonment on the way towards Rome to be held trial in front of Caesar. I hope that we can appreciate, as exciting as the story is, that one of the most interesting features is that there's no preaching of the gospel whatsoever. There's not one moment where Paul preaches the message of Jesus as the promised Jewish Messiah, the Savior sent from God. And yet, through all of what happens, they go from Caesarea through all this shipwreck and dark days, and finally arrive at Rome, the center of the universe, where not only does the gospel spread there, but it spreads from there, arguably more in this story than it did in the entire book of Acts. So the question is, how did the gospel spread without any preaching? The answer is in the crux of the story, where Paul tried to speak into the desperateness of their situation at one point, but his voice was rejected, and then later tried again and surprisingly was listened to because he was recognized as speaking on behalf of God. And the point of the story is, when people weren't listening to Paul and God on Paul's behalf, they were headed to disaster, but when they gave God's voice a chance through Paul, their lives were spared. And it asks the question of us, to what degree we're listening to God's voice through the lives of the people around us. Because the same thing's true for us today. You don't need preaching to hear the voice of God. Even as a preacher, I can affirm that you don't need preaching to hear the voice of God. Yes, God speaks through his word. Yes, God speaks by his spirit. One of the primary ways he wants to communicate to us is through the people he places in our lives to provide encouragement and accountability, nurturing and challenge and correction. And so as a life group, as some of those voices to one another, I hope that you'll have a great discussion in processing this today to consider what it is that maybe causes us to resist or reject hearing God speak to us through other people, what makes us uncomfortable, or what maybe causes us to write people off and not hear the voice of God through them. And contrarily, what it would take for each of us to open our hearts and minds and ears to the voice of God through other people to a greater degree, maybe even or especially to each other as a life group, so that increasingly we can invite the voice of one another and we can invite God's voice on behalf of one another into each other's lives and have the courage and the safety of an environment like life group to be that agent and to be those nurturers of encouragement and accountability and care and challenge and correction to one another so that we can benefit even or especially in the storms of life that we're facing, to be saved through the voice of God speaking to us through the people he's placed in our lives. So I hope that you'll take some time to reflect on that, consider how God spoke to you, and be that encouragement and support to one another. But let's appreciate through Acts 27 and 28, even though there was no preaching, the gospel spread more than ever before, and the work of Jesus can spread in our lives more than ever before, even without preaching, if we open ourselves up to the voice of God through the people around us, especially people like our life groups. So I wish you a great, really great discussion today as you process Acts 27 and 28. Blessings, everyone.